Welcome to At the Table. I'm Clark Wolf.
And I'm Marcy Smothers.
And this is the weekly radio show about all things food.
Brought to you from Sonoma County, not just wine country, but farm country.
Marcy, today we're going to start with a topic that's near and dear to both of our hearts. One we argue about, one we cheer about, one we stamp around and fuss about. What's the difference between a cook and a chef?
Well, first I'd like to say that I distinguish myself as neither. People all the time say to me, "Are you a chef?" Marcy's a chef, and that's because I'm a good home cook, and people confuse the term. So I am not an expert. I'm the food explorer. So I always make very careful to say, even if I'm cooking at home, I'm not a chef, and then I say I'm a home cooker. Because quite frankly, I think home cooker is funny, and that's what I've been calling myself for 5 years. So I'm a home cooker.
You are. And I, on the other hand, am also not a chef. I'm also not a cook. I mean, I cook at home.
But you advise chefs all the time.
You know what I am as a grocer to begin with? I started in a cheese shop at the base of Nob Hill. I brought arugula to California in 1980. I really got to learn what ingredients are in the world that chefs want to work with, that home cooks want to work with. My greatest teachers were authors. They were cookery authors. They were
like
James Beard and Julia Child.
Yeah.
And really, Alice Waters, even though she's a restaurateur and a restaurant chef in a way, she really was never a line chef. So the argument between what is a chef and what is a cook is a good one. Marcy, to you, what is a really solid cook?
Well, this may not be the simplest answer, but I'm going to put it this way. Thomas Keller calls himself a cook. To me, dun-dun-dun. And that will be right after this break. What else is there to say?
Thomas Keller of the French Laundry and Per Se.
You know, he is he may not be known entirely for his humility, yet he makes a point of saying that he is just a cook.
Yes.
My friend Doug Keene, who has 2 Michelin stars for Cyrus, is the reigning top chef master and has won several James Beard Awards, says to me, "I'm a cook. It's just dinner." So something that's a little bit, sometimes the best ones sort of diminish it and make a little bit of, they're not making fun of themselves. They're just not trying to take the haughty part of it all. So to answer your question to me, I would say that a chef has a lot more responsibility and has incumbent upon them to be very consistent. And they tend to run kitchens. Whereas a cook could be a line cook, you could be flipping hamburgers, you could be working with the chef. That would be my first take on it.
All right. And I say that I've got to tell you the story about trying to hire an executive chef for an 800-room hotel property on the beach in Miami.
Okay.
We had a candidate who was the 3-time best chef of the entire state of Florida. And I'm funny about this. When I interview a chef, I want them to cook for me. And in those days, and it would be kind of similar now, I had them do a Caesar salad. I had them do roast chicken and mashed potatoes. These are American staples and the kind of hotel travel food, the comforting foods that have got to be done really well. Plus, some of those things without 3 sous chefs and all kinds of prep cooks are not that easy to do. What was interesting is that this very nice man in his early 40s couldn't cook. He couldn't get the job because he had been a successful chef, executive chef, but he had never been the chef de cuisine, which we should talk about in a minute. He had never been a cook. He had never been directly, or it had been a long time.
Or been cooking.
And he, frankly, couldn't cook.
So an executive chef, does that tend to be somebody that oversees menus and purchasing and more like a manager?
Actually, an executive chef is the chief. They are in charge of all of it.
Doesn't chef mean chief?
Kind of. And they also have to do budgets, they have to do schedules, they have to do recipes, and all those things that are technical and that keep control, that lead the kitchen. By the same token, life has really changed. When I was first learning about food, the executive chef of a hotel didn't even have to be friendly. All they basically did was smoke cigarettes and yell at people, right? They had big bellies. Often they were from Germany or Switzerland or France, and women were not allowed anywhere near the kitchen, which is ironic because in some countries, professional chefs are only women, in Tunisia, for example. But in America, we had that Western European tradition. But now, what are the things that chefs have to do? I mean, you think about your good friends that are chefs, they have to be on television. They have to be business people. They have to know about real estate. So the chief thing really is a lot more valid and interesting today than it's ever been before, isn't it?
Yeah, but they both cook. We can agree on that, right?
No, we can absolutely agree on that. And if they don't cook, they're not coming to my house, right? And I have to ask you another big question. There's this thing, Alan Richmond, who's won a lot of awards for writing in GQ, and whose writing can be pretty snippy, and sometimes I think he goes too far. And that's a lot coming from me, that he goes too far. But he wrote about something called egalitarian cuisine. That's where you pay homage to the chef, They make you taste the dust and lick it off the roof of your head. Or
And they won't put salt and pepper on the table. I mean, honestly, I respect. There are some places where it's perfectly seasoned, but sometimes I want that salt and pepper to, maybe put a little accent on it for myself. It's anathema to certain chefs. They will not put it out there. I understand at one restaurant, I believe it is April Bloomfield's restaurant, Spotted Pig in New York, that she won't serve ketchup.
Well, here's the deal. She's famous for her burgers. Let's be specific. She makes a burger with blue cheese dressing and a brioche bun that's been buttered. It's delicious, but she won't serve ketchup. Forget cheddar cheese. Forget bacon.
Mayonnaise.
Forget anything else you want. This is her burger, and if you'd like to buy one, fine. It's not the kind of loving cookery that I learned from Marion Cunningham, the wonderful author who wrote the Fannie Farmer cookbooks, who wrote the Fannie Farmer baking book, who wrote the breakfast book, and all those great things. Where did you learn, and where do you learn when it comes to cooks and chefs? Where do you learn most, from cooks or from chefs? Because I know you like those chefs.
Cookbooks, and really cookbooks, which are oftentimes written by cooks and chefs. So I'm not giving a lot of clarity there. And also just, the more you eat and the more you taste, those are, I think, the ideas that the home cookers like me take it home. I'll have something at a restaurant, really like it, want to deconstruct it and make it at home. And what I've found is most times if you ask the chef, may I please have the recipe? Most times they will give it to you. Not necessarily written, but they'll come and tell you about how to prepare it. So that's how I learn about food and learn about cooking, either reading from a cookbook or asking a chef or a home cook how they made it. The one thing I don't personally watch is food television. I do not watch food television, except for a few like Bravo Top Chef and Top Chef Master, but not the cooking shows, not the how-to shows. I don't care for those.
And why don't you care for them? I mean, why is that not?
But mostly it's unrelatable food for me, honestly. It's not the kind of food I want to cook and I want to eat.
Because it's not clean enough, it's not healthy enough, it's not good enough ingredients, it's not from the farmer down the road here in Sonoma County. What?
Well, you're a little bit fussier than I am in that department.
I'm a lot fussier.
It's more like, okay, thank you. That is a distinction.
Let's be honest.
Honestly, it's mostly, what do I want to eat tonight? I know that if you hear somebody talk about what they're making for dinner, the chances are you're going to go to the market and make what the person is making for dinner because they've got your mind thinking and your taste buds salivating. When I watch a lot of the food television, the types of things they're doing are heavier, maybe more meat-based, not the light 50% vegetable way that I like to eat. I call myself a vegetalist. I like to have 50% vegetables and a salad. So 2 vegetables, a salad, and a light protein. I'm not knocking food television, but I'm just answering your question. Where do I get my inspiration as a home cooker to cook? From chefs or cooks? I get it from those, and I get it from cookbooks.
And for me, I get my inspiration about what to cook and what to eat and what to try, if I may, from people. I really need to know that the person who's offering me this food is somebody I want to take something from into my body. It's really intimate. I'm very specific about this. I was very fortunate to help Dr. Mary Nessel at NYU start what was the country's first food studies program. She asked me, as a microbiologist and dietitian, top scientist in the country, to help her food up the program. And so what we did was what was most natural. Is we gathered people we respect, and I know you're very much this way too, people you love and respect and admire, and asked them what they felt young people needed to know, or older people who were getting an education, a more broadly based kind of liberal arts and sciences education in foodism. You know what I mean? If we all studied food, BS, Master's, PhD, as the basis of other things we did in life, we'd all be better citizens, and Lord knows we'd all be better fed.
Okay, so speaking of foodism, let's get back to your point earlier and explain to our audience the difference between an executive chef, a chef de cuisine, garde manger. What are the different positions in the kitchen? If we can't quite agree the chef cook, talk about what it's codified at least to be.
All right, so everybody needs to understand that some of the codification and some of the delineation that happens in cooks comes from France, comes from Escoffier, who turned out to be an embezzler, but that's another story. And we go, of course, from some kind of a construct, but it's not always the same. People often say to me, okay, I've got this executive chef. Who should I have as the sous chef? And I say, well, what are the strengths? What are the talents? It's really about building a team in any kitchen. But traditionally, the executive chef is the top guy. It's the executive producer. But you ever watch TV and it's the co-executive producers? There can be 3 or 4 or 5 of them. That means that's the person, or that's one of the key people who make it all possible, okay, who oversee it all. The chef de cuisine is the interesting one. That's the person who's really making the food. That's the person who, when you look at that menu, it's their food. A sous chef, an executive sous chef, a kitchen manager, these are all people that help get the job done, will step in the role of chef de cuisine, or maybe even in the role of executive chef. They may do the scheduling and do the purchasing, but it's all part of a team. But when you see the name chef de cuisine or the term chef de cuisine, you know that's the woman or the man who's making the food for you.
Cooking. And then you have the line cooks, the hot stations and the cold stations and the garde manger.
That's a big kitchen. Good for you.
Well.
Look at you. You're wonderful. Yeah, the cold station, the hot station, the slide or the expediter. Oftentimes, if you peek into a kitchen, and these days you can see, and they're often open, you'll see somebody on this side, on the customer side or on the waiter's side. That's called expediting, as in, let's go, guys. And that's sometimes the executive
like
chef.
Gordon Ramsay in Hell's Kitchen.
Not at all like him. I'd rather eat dog food than anything that man
But
ever
he
cooked.
does do that. He does do the expediter role sometimes.
He does,
Okay.
exactly. He does. He likes to be in control, even though it's going titanically down into the hole. But anyway, yes, that expediter could be the executive chef. Sometimes it's the owner of the restaurant who wants to be on that other side, seeing how it goes. That's the last moment before the chef gets it that we can make sure it's a beautiful plate of food. And, when all is said and done, the more people in a restaurant, whether they be waiters or bartenders, who can cook, who know how to make food delicious, the better a restaurant it's going to be.
So back to our chef cook. Do you agree then that chefs are more qualified than cooks? Or you say that's a misnomer?
I think that every chef ought to be a cook, but every cook doesn't have to be a chef.
That's well said.
Well, then, that's a good place to end. Thank you all for being with us at the Table, the weekly radio show about all things food. I'm Clark Wolf.
And I'm Marcy Smothers. We are coming from Sonoma wine country, not just wine country, but farm country.